My lords, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. It's a privilege to follow so many trailblazers. I'm trying to think, what kind of trailblazer am I? My first job was ringing the jingle on my father's ice cream van in the Isle of Wight. So I think I'm probably the first woman jingle bell ringer to run an international development agency. An enormous thank you to Bishop Rachel. Can I say that again? Bishop Rachel, for hosting us here this evening, and to all of you for coming so that we can mark International Women's Day together. Today, around 700 million people live below the global poverty line, on less than $1.90 a day. Tonight, they will go to bed hungry. It's been estimated that around 70% of these people, over 2/3 of the world's extreme poor, are women and girls. Women represent half the world's population, perform nearly 2/3 of the world's work hours, receive 10% of the world's income, and own 1% of the world's property. And that's why at Christian Aid we often say that poverty has a woman's face. On every field visit I've ever undertaken, I've seen the reality of this close up. The young woman in a Kenyan slum considering trading her virginity to pay to bury her father will probably forever remain the most searing example I've encountered, and why I now understand that this problem of gender inequality is about personal, social, and political power, and not just money. In the developing world, a woman dies every 90 seconds following complications of pregnancy or childbirth. This is not simply for lack of health facilities. It's also because a woman's ability to access reproductive health services depends not just on the availability of those services, but on whether her husband will allow her to control her own body, use contraception, and travel to a family planning clinic. We know that the same girl who's forced into an early marriage is the same girl who will be forced into a lifetime of unpaid domestic labour, who will not be allowed to complete her education, who may be forced to have her genitals mutilated, and when her husband finally dies, will be denied the right to inherit any property. Where gender discrimination intersects with other inequalities related to age, disability, sexuality, caste, and so on, women and girls are even more vulnerable. We cannot overcome poverty without overcoming these scandalous injustices, but change is coming. At Christian Aid, we know the world must and can be different, and that if we want the world to change, we have to start with ourselves. We've been working hard to make sure that gender justice is at the core of all our programmatic and policy work across the world, and to create programmes specifically designed to address gender inequality. So it is that we work on supporting women to enter the political arena. We help them lobby for gender-responsive taxation and budgeting, for access to the family planning and maternal health care services they obviously need, and access to sustainable livelihoods that give them status in their communities. Change is coming. We've also asked ourselves, as people who believe that every person is made in the image of God and so is of inherent dignity and infinite worth, what is the particular contribution that we as a faith-based organisation can make towards gender justice? We knew that we'd been able to contribute something special in the fight against HIV. A change in the understanding of affected communities that HIV was a virus, not a sin. Working with faith leaders in countries seriously affected by HIV, we've been able to challenge the stigma attached to the virus, empowering people to come forward for counselling, testing and treatment. And from deep theological and programmatic reflection on the read across from that work to the question of gender injustice, Side by Side was born. What we've catalysed here is a new movement of faith leaders equipped and willing to carry the message that gender equality is a good and wholesome thing which people of faith should feel confident to embrace. And it's paying off. and change is coming. In Nigeria, we've partnered with both Christian and Muslim faith leaders for a 3-year programme to improve choices and opportunities available to adolescent girls in their communities. This is already helping some young teenage girls to get support from faith leaders to negotiate with their parents to allow them to finish school rather than marry much too young. Change is coming. To those of you who have partnered with us already, tonight is the chance to celebrate your support. It's a time when we can acknowledge too those who have been called to glory and still make our gender work possible, including Sophie Hamilton, some of whose family are here this evening, and whose legacy enabled us to work so effectively with DFID and others for gender equality to be front and centre in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We stand on the shoulders of so many women and men, past and present, who believe that change is not only possible, but can be made unstoppable. At a time when one of the most powerful political leaders in the world has been known to boast of his ability to sexually assault women with impunity, that is an important narrative to hold on to. No room then for rose-tinted spectacles, no room for complacency, but room for hope. Thank you for joining us, and when it comes, happy International Women's Day.